Well, the core is the missing body argument. If Jesus' body didn't rise from the dead, then someone must have stolen it because an occupied tomb would have brought the resurrection story to a grinding halt. The New Testament talks about, we know where the grave of David is. Let's go there, and we could see where he's buried. His bones are right there. So why wouldn't the Jewish authorities go, what are you talking about, being raised from the dead? There's the Roman guard right there. We could just have them roll it back, and there it is. But it seems like now we have to pay people to say that the disciples overcame the Roman guard and then made away with Jesus' body. So that's really what happened. So someone must have stolen it, right? That's there. So because an occupied tomb would have brought the resurrection story to a grinding halt, but the Roman authorities would not steal the body because that might contribute to unrest, upend what exactly they wanted to squash. And really one of the reasons why Pilate went as far as he did was pronouncing death on Christ, because he was essentially put in Jerusalem, this backwater country, to quash all uprisings. And he had ingratiated himself to the Jewish people himself by mixing the blood of those he slaughtered into their sacrifices as a big no-no. And so he wasn't on as best of terms with the Jewish leaders as what he probably wanted to be. So that's the Roman case. Well, the Jewish authorities would not steal it because that would undermine their religious influence. Again, one of the reasons why they brought Jesus before Pilate was because they couldn't carry out a capital punishment. Only the Romans could. And to steal the body as a way of not making a martyr of Jesus in that way would completely upend their influence. And then the disciples wouldn't steal it and then lie about Jesus rising from the dead, because that would get them into trouble with the Romans and Jewish authorities, precisely for the reasons I just mentioned. And, as the story goes, what were they doing? Well, they weren't boldly proclaiming, the death of Christ and the travesty of both Jewish and Roman leaders. They were hiding. They were hiding in the locked rooms, and they were sending their women out to do what they would not do. So all these things kind of fold together, showing that the missing body scenario seems to not hinge on a stolen body, but on it just going away. So by process of elimination, then no one stole the body, and therefore the body must have been raised from the dead.
Yeah. So there you have it. Romans didn't steal it. The Jewish didn't steal it because of all these various results. And of course, the disciples didn't steal it. And so Jesus' body had to be raised. He had to rise from the dead. And so he goes on to say that given that Jesus rose from the dead, can this fact alone establish the truths of Jesus' claims to deity? And Montgomery stoutly answers in the affirmative, arguing that the very nature of legal argument, judgments rendered on the basis of factual verdicts, rest on the ability of facts, he tells us, to speak for themselves. He points out that the resurrection did not occur in a factual vacuum, but was accompanied by Jesus's own explanation of its significance as the miraculous act of God. So Jesus said he was going to do this, then it happened. And so it was not done in a vacuum. And of course, we have all of these various facts that he points out. And so it shows that indeed Jesus rose from the dead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think he probably could go farther. And I believe Tim McGrew has gone built upon this idea where it's not just a factual vacuum of Jesus' claims, but all of the Old Testament you can bring in and say, well, this is what should have been expected. It wasn't expected because of various reasons that the Jewish authorities weren't doing. That was in line with what they should have been doing. But Psalm 22 and Isaiah 53, all these things fall upon this one fact. And in fact, that's all what Christian history has said, is that all of human history has led up to the focal point, which is the cross at the top of the hill. And so it's not just Jesus' own words, but it's all the words of the Old Testament as well.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not only can Jesus' resurrection alone establish his deity, it can establish the existence of the deity in the first place. The existence of God then becomes what Montgomery says here is it becomes the proper inference from Jesus' resurrection, as he himself explained it, not a priori metaphysical hurdle to jump in order to arrive at the proper historical and evidential interpretation of that event. So the last comment is aimed at classical apologetics, which argues that the existence of the God needs to be established before trying to show the truth of the meaning of the resurrection. Listen, you guys, you don't need a two-step approach, just this one, because if you can prove Jesus, his claims, if I rise from the dead, I am God, worship me, well, then that's included.
And he rises from the dead, and therefore his claims have been shown to be true.
We should at least listen a little closer to the guy who rises from the dead. Okay. Well, Montgomery, in fact, was one of the first evidentialists to self-consciously distinguish his apologetic method from the classical approach. So no longer is he just answering against deism, but he's also separating himself out further from the classicalists.
Yeah, so he there's this deist thing, but he's focusing on the atheist, and he does that by saying God exists, and you can tell it because Jesus rose from the dead, and he said he would do it. And oh, by the way, you don't need this two-step approach, classicalists, right? Because we have the resurrection, right? And that shows that not only is Jesus God, but that if that's the case, then God does exist. And so we don't need that two-step approach, right? All right, so that's Montgomery.